But to tell the truth, I've never been particularly resolute, I mean given to resolutions, but rather inclined to plunge headlong into the shit without knowing who was shitting against whom, or on which side I had the better chance of skulking with success. But from this leaning to I derived scant satisfaction, and if I have never quite got rid of it, it is not for want of trying. The fact is, it seems, that the most you can hope is to be a little less in the end the creature you were in the beginning, in the middle. For I had hardly perfected my plan in my head when my bicycle ran over a dog, as subsequently appeared, and fell to the ground, an ineptness all the more unpardonable as the dog, duly leashed, was not out on the road, but in on the pavement, docile at its mistress's heels. Precautions are like resolutions, to be taken with precaution. The lady must have thought she had left nothing to chance so far as the safety of her dog was concerned, whereas, in reality, she was setting the whole system of nature at naught, no less surely than I myself with my insane demands for more light. But instead of groveling in my turn, invoking my great age and infirmities, I made things worse by trying to run away. I was soon overtaken by a bloodthirsty mob of both sexes and all ages, for I caught a glimpse of white beards and little almost angel faces, and they were preparing to tear me to pieces, when the lady intervened. She said in effect, she told me so later on, and I believed her, "Leave this poor old man alone. He has killed Teddy, I grant you that. Teddy, whom I loved like my own child, but it is not so serious as it seems, for as it happens, I was taking him to the veterinary surgeon to have him put out of his misery." For Teddy was old, blind, deaf, crippled, with rheumatism, and perpetually incontinent, night and day, indoors and out of doors. Thanks then to this poor old man, I've been spared a painful task, not to mention the expense which I am ill able to afford, having no other means of support than the pension of my dear departed, fallen in defense of a country that called itself his, and from which in his lifetime he never derived the smallest benefit, but only insults and vexations. The crowd was beginning to disperse, the danger was past, but the lady in her stride. "You may say," she said, "that he did wrong to run away, that he should have explained, asked to be forgiven. Granted, but it is clear he has not all his wits about him, that he is beside himself for reasons of which we know nothing, and which might put us all to shame if we did know them. I even wonder if he knows what he has done." There emanated such tedium from this droning voice that I was making ready to move on when the unavoidable police constable rose up before me. He brought down heavily on my handlebars his big red hairy paw. I noticed it myself, and had it appears with the lady the following conversation. "Is this the man who ran over your dog, madam?" "He is, sergeant, and what of it?" "No, I can't record this fatuous colloquy, so I will merely observe that finally, in his turn, the constable too dispersed, the word is not too strong, grumbling and growling, followed by the last idlers who had given up all hope of my coming to a bad end. But he turned back and said, 'Remove that dog.' Free at last to go, I began to do so, but the lady, a Mrs. Loy, I might as well say it now and be done with it, or Luce, I forget, Christian name something like Sophie, held me back by the tail of my coat and said, assuming the words were the same when I heard them as when first spoken, 'Sir, I need you.' And seeing, I suppose, from my expression, which frequently betrays me, that she had made herself understood, she must have said, 'If he understands that, he can understand anything.' And she was not mistaken, for after some time I found myself in possession of certain ideas or points of view which could only have come to me from her. Namely, that having killed her dog, I was morally obliged to help her carry it home and bury it. That she did not wish to prosecute me for what I had done, but that it was not always possible to do as one did not wish. That she found me likable enough in spite of my hideous appearance and would be happy to hold out to me a helping hand, and so on. I've forgotten the half of it. Ah, yes, I too needed her, it seemed. She needed me to help her get rid of her dog, and I needed her, I've forgotten for what. She must have told me, for that was an insinuation I could not decently pass over in silence as I had the rest. And I made no bones about telling her I needed neither her nor anyone else, which was perhaps a slight exaggeration, for I must have needed my mother, otherwise why this frenzy of wanting to get to her? That is one of the many reasons why I avoid speaking as much as possible. For I always say either too much or too little, which is a terrible thing for a man with a passion for truth like mine. And I shall not abandon the subject, to which I shall probably never have occasion to return, with such a storm blowing up, without making this curious observation that it often happened to me, before I gave up speaking for good, to think I had said too little when in fact I had said too much, and in fact to have said too little when I thought I had said too much. I mean that on reflection, in the long run rather, my verbal profusion turned out to be penury, and inversely. So time sometimes turns the tables, in other words, or perhaps another thing. Whatever I said, it was never enough and always too much. Yes, I was never silent. Whatever I said was never silent. Whatever I said, I was never silent. Divine analysis that conduces thus to knowledge of yourself and of your fellow men, if you happen to have any. For to say I needed no one was not to say too much, but an infinitesimal part of what I should have said, could not have said, should never have said. Need of my mother. No, there were no words for the want of need in which I was perishing, so that she, I mean Sophie, must have told me the reasons why I needed her, since I had dared to disagree, and perhaps if I took the trouble I might find them again. But trouble, many thanks, some other time. And now enough of this boulevard. It must have been a boulevard of all these righteous ones, these guardians of the peace. All these feet and hands stamping, clutching, clenched in vain, these bawling mouths that never bawl out of season. This sky beginning to drip, enough of being abroad, trapped, visible. Someone was poking the dog with a malacca. The dog was uniformly yellow, a mongrel, I suppose, or a pedigree. I can never tell the difference. His death must have hurt him less than my fall me. And he at least was dead. We slung him across the saddle and set off like an army in retreat, helping each other, I suppose, to keep the corpse from falling, to keep the bicycle moving, to keep ourselves moving. Through the jeering crowd, the house where Sophie, no, I can't call her that anymore. I'll try calling her Luce without the misses. The house where Luce lived was not far away. Oh, it was not nearby either. I had my belly full by the time I got there. That is to say, I didn't have it really. You think you have your belly full, but you seldom have it really. It was because I knew I was there that I had my belly full. A mile more to go, and I would only have had my belly full an hour later. Human nature, marvelous thing. The house where Luce lived, must I describe it? I don't think so. I won't. That's all I know for the moment. Perhaps later on if I get to know it. And Luce, must I describe her? I suppose so. Let's first bury the dog. It was she dug the hole under a tree. You always bury your dog under a tree. I don't know why. But I have my suspicions. It was she dug the hole because I couldn't, though I was the gentleman, because of my leg. That is to say, I could have dug with a trowel, but not with a spade. For when you dig a grave, one leg supports the weight of the body, while the other, flexing and unflexing, drives the spade into the earth. Now my sick leg, I forget which, it's immaterial here, was in a condition neither to dig because it was rigid, nor alone to support me because it would have collapsed. I had, so to speak, only one leg at my disposal. I was virtually one-legged, and I would have been happier, livelier, amputated at the groin. And if they had removed a few testicles into the bargain, I wouldn't have objected. For from such testicles as mine, dangling at mid-thigh at the end of a meager cord, there was nothing more to be squeezed, not a drop, so that non ce la spim il desiderio, and I longed to see them gone from the old stand where they bore false witness for and against, and the lifelong charge against me. For if they accused me of having made a balls of it, of me, of them, they thanked me for it too from the depths of their rotten bag, the right lower than the left, or inversely, I forget, decaying circus clowns. And worse still, they got in my way when I tried to walk, when I tried to sit down, as if my sick leg was not enough. And when I rode my bicycle, they bounced up and down. So the best thing for me would have been for them to go, and I would have seen to it myself with a knife or secateurs, but for my terror of physical pain and festered wounds, so that I shook. Yes, all my life I have gone in terror of festered wounds. I, who never festered, I was so acid. My life, now I speak of it as something over, now as of a joke which still goes on, and is neither. It is neither. For at the same time it is over and it goes on, and is there any tense for that? Watch wound and buried by the watchmaker before he died, whose ruined works will one day speak of God to the worms. But those cullions, I must be attached to them after all, cherish them as others do their scars or the family album. In any case, it wasn't their fault. I couldn't dig, but my legs. It was Luce dug the hole while I held the dog in my arms. He was heavy already and cold, but he had not yet begun to stink. He smelt bad if you like, but bad like an old dog, not like a dead dog. He too had dug holes, perhaps at this very spot. We buried him as he was, no box of wrapping of any kind, like a Carthusian monk, but with his collar and lead. It was she put him in the hole, though I was the gentleman. For I cannot stoop, neither can I kneel because of my infirmity, and if I ever stoop, forgetting who I am, or kneel, make no mistake, it will not be me, but another. To throw him in the hole was all I could have done, and I would have done it gladly, and yet I did not do it. All the things you would do gladly, oh, without enthusiasm, but gladly. All the things there seems no reason for your not doing and that you do not do. Can it be we are not free? It might be worth looking into. But what was my contribution to this burial? It was she dug the hole, put in the dog, filled up the hole. On the whole, I was a mere spectator. I contributed my presence, as if it had been my own burial. And it was. It was a larch. It is the only tree I can identify with certainty. Funny she should have chosen to bury her dog beneath the only tree I can identify with certainty.